in Julius Caesar that some cowards die so many times before their death that the brave do not taste of death but just once. And I want to say that death is a necessary evil that will come when it will come. And therefore there's no need to fear death. Then the other day I was talking to somebody else, he told me, you shouldn't really fear death. He said that, look, if you are sick, there are only two things that can happen to you. Either you will be treated and you will get well, they have nothing to fear. But if you don't recover, then you will die. If you die, there's nothing to fear. Why? Because you will either go to heaven or to hell. If you go to heaven, there's nothing to worry about. You will be okay. Even if you go to hell, there's nothing to worry about. You'll find so many of your friends. So spend a long time just greeting them. How are you? How are you? Before your time for the fire comes. So therefore, don't fear. You have nothing to fear as Kenyans. We will succeed in the long run. Now, I think this foundation has done a very good thing to choose to hold this conference. And they have told me that they're going to make it an annual event. So it is my real pleasure to speak to this distinguished audience at a time the country is undergoing profound challenges with no end in sight. My task is to share with you the alternative economic pathways proposed by Azimio la Umoja One Kenya Coalition Party for the people of Kenya. I will do that with pleasure. But before I do that, let me thank the Konrad Adenauer Foundation, Stiftung, as it's called in German, for putting together this conference on the subject of transforming a nation. It is proper that a foundation that bears the name of the man who presided over the reconstruction of Germany after the Second World War should get us together so that we can discuss our own reconstruction. I happen to have been in Germany during its days of reconstruction and transformation, and I can say two things without fear of contradiction. First, transforming a nation takes hard, dedicated, and honest labor of leaders and citizens. Secondly, no nation is beyond reconstruction and transformation. All it takes is leadership. And I arrived when the war had ended, the Marshall Plan had been introduced, and the work of reconstruction was in its second phase. I have found when Konrad Adenauer himself was still the Chancellor, and at that time when I arrived, when you went to Germany, and then you went to Britain and France, who are part of the victor powers, you'd think that it was Germany that won the war, and those countries had lost the war. But Germany had been devastated. Most German cities were bombed, some of them nearly to the ground. There's a city in the eastern part of Germany called Dresden. Dresden was razed almost to the ground. But the British, basically, at the time when, in fact, the war had ended, but because of the anger of what had happened, bombing of London and so on, it was a revenge bombing. But the Germans reconstructed. And at that time, West Germany was the strongest economy in Western Europe. And East Germany was also the strongest economy in Eastern Europe at that time. That was basically because of hard work. I want to say that a year after our election, if you ask Kenyans, are you better off today than you were at this time last year? The answer will be obvious, that we are in a deep hole. Failing policies and grim economic prospects. There is a devastating loss of trust and confidence in our economy, our financial markets, and our government. We are caught in a cycle where reduced spending power leads to loss of jobs, which leads to even less spending, where the people can't borrow because rates charged are too high, yet lack of borrowing slows growth and leads to even less credit. Credible data collected and published by the government confirms all this grim news. And this meeting is taking place as a day after the State of the Nation address by the President. I'm going to try to answer some of the things that he said yesterday. But this is not a response. At the Hustler Fund, which was supposed to support households and micro enterprises, default on payments at a higher rate than those at the commercial banks, circles, and microfinance. Out of the Hustler Fund's outstanding, that is 10.2 billion shillings worth of loans in the last 9 months, 29% is deemed to be portfolio at risk, implying it has not been serviced by the borrowers as per agreed schedule. This means that borrowed amounts worth about 2.9 billion shillings in Hustler Fund loans fall in the category of non-performing loans. Job cuts are back to the rate where they were during the COVID. According to the CBK survey, more than a quarter of chief executives expect to cut jobs before the end of the year because of increased operating costs and softening demand for goods and services, setting up families for a gloomy festivities period. The Central Bank of Kenya is the survey that targeted CEOs of more than 1,000 private sector firms through online questionnaires shows that 26.3% of those surveyed expect to cut their workforce between now and the end of the year, while 63.5% will not be hiring any new staff. At the Nairobi Security Exchange, some 6,256 foreign investors fled in the last 9 months. This is 42% of foreign investors in the country. This exodus is a result of the rapid but unstable tax policies that are scaring away foreign investors and leading to low revenue collections. In October, the same National Security Exchange was ranked the worst performing African bus in the first 9 months of the year in dollar returns. Investors prefer a country with a stable taxation policy, a stable currency, and a growing economy. The current regime is changing tax policy frequently, mismanaging the shilling, and weakening economic growth. Kenyans are ditching mobile payments. A number of local SMEs using payment methods such as pay bills and Lipa na M-Pesa are now asking their customers to use cash when paying for goods and services to avoid taxation. Fuel consumption fell rapidly between January and June, dropping to the lowest levels in the more than 5 years. Up to 85% of firms are not paying corporate taxes. At least 8 in 10 companies in Kenya did not pay taxes on earnings last financial year. This signals a tough economic environment that hit sales, prompting some businesses to scale down operations. The Kenya Revenue Authority, KRA, missed its revenue target for the first quarter of the current financial year by 79 billion Kenya shillings. Of course, the story of the Kenya shilling on a free fall bears no repeating. It is obvious to everybody. From 120 to the dollar to now 159. I could go on, but I beg to stop there so that we can get into what Azimio thinks. The fact is, many Kenyans are both anxious and uncertain of what the future holds. The country is going through a recipe of policy mistakes, failures, and shortcomings served in an authoritarian, paternalistic leadership style. Nobody in government cares about building broad public support around these programs. Everything is forced down everyone's throats. In the run-up to 2022 election, we warned that the sectors of every economy are intertwined, and you cannot benefit one sector by denying the other. We warned that Kenya Kwanza was never going to help the hustlers by robbing the rich and the middle class. In the wake of the Finance Act of 2023, we warned that no nation can ever tax its citizens into prosperity. We are concerned that it is getting too late to change the course. We fear that consequences of the foundation laid in the first year of this administration could linger for years if nothing is done. Our country could lose the competitive edge that it has always had in the region and sub-Saharan Africa. This bad situation could easily get out of hand. What is to be done? For us in Azimio, reduction in the cost of living is a priority economic imperative. This will be achieved by providing some basic relief to citizens, including reduction of taxes and stimulating production. To release resources to achieve these objectives, government must cut the budget by an estimated 500 billion shillings. The current policies have hit low-income families particularly hard. These are the same low-income families that the administration promised to lift up. These families spend more than 40% of their income on food. They deserve and require relief. In particular, we must cut fuel taxes and raise social welfare payments. At this time of duress, we demand tax cuts, not increases. Kenyans need to see their taxes go down, not up. We believe the current taxation regime is not sustainable. We warned at the beginning that beyond a certain point, increasing taxes leads to lower collection. It has become real as Kenya Revenue Authority misses one revenue target after another. Tax on fuel is up but fuel levy collection is down. We were doing this as a result of our experience when we formed government under NASA. Under NASA, we found an economy that was stagnant, and the growth was negative. Revenue collection was very low, and the Paris Club had actually clamped down on the government. So the government was actually just limping. And when we came into government, what we did was to address the two sides of the balance sheet, income and expenditure. We found out the government was collecting 200 billion shillings of all that was being collected. We looked at the sources of revenue, customs duty, income tax, the VAT, and so on. And then the other side, expenditure, how they were procuring. You looked at revenue officers, those officers in the customs, in the income tax department, in the VAT, and procurement officers in all the ministries. They were the boys in town. They're the ones who are buying apartment blocks in town, the ones who are driving the latest models of cars, Mercedes, Toyota, what have you. They're the ones who are building castles in rural areas. They're the ones who are building high-rise buildings in village markets. If you did a lifestyle audit, you're able to catch them. And we did lifestyle audits and caught very many of them. We sacked some we sent to jail. And all of a sudden, revenue rose up. From 200 billion shillings, within the 6 months from January to June, we went up by 100 billion shillings. We collected 300 billion shillings. So you said the answer is not to increase taxes, but to spread out, widen the net, and lower the taxes, and we get more revenue. The following year it went 500 billion, 700 billion, 900, we reached $1 trillion. We were able to finance most of our budget from local resources without having to borrow from donors. 95% of our development expenditure was coming from local revenue. And that's why we were advising the inadvisable that you don't have to increase taxes to get revenue. Procurement, because you can raise revenue, but it all just goes into people's pockets. We found that under Moi, there was a procurement law which says that any item above 100,000 shillings had to procure competitively. In other words, you have to advertise in at least 3 newspapers. There must be at least 3 bidders, and you procure competitively. Each and every ministry has a procurement officer seconded from the Treasury who was in charge. We found that each procurement officer had 3 companies registered. And there was a kind of a cartel and a collusion. The one in Ministry of Finance is supplying Ministry of Education. The one in Education is supplying health. One is health is supplying roads. One road is supplying agriculture. And if you are the tender, there will be 3 companies. All those 3 belong to one person. And of course the building, the commission, which is shared among various commission officers. An item that's supposed to be procured at 100,000 shillings goes for 5 million shillings. and that's where the money is being lost. These ones, again, we did lifestyle audit, we sacked some of them, we jailed some of them. The government was now procuring competitively. And that is how we manage that economy. So you need to stimulate production. Interest rates need to come down in order to stimulate economic activity. This is particularly urgent and critical, given that in the Finance Act of 2023, the regime is pursuing higher spending and taxes for the next 2 years. Businesses will obviously pass the costs to consumers, worsening the cost of living further. We needed to invest in direct relief to individuals through programs that put money directly into the people's pockets, which is why we asked the Kenya Kwanza to continue with and expand the Kazi Mtaani program. And it can be expanded the way we did it ourselves there, Kazi kwa vijana, to the rural areas as well. Investment in labor-intensive programs like road construction, rural water systems, afforestation, and so on. This has proven over the years to yield positive results. We believe that putting money in revenue officers, those officers in the customs, in the income tax department, in the VAT, and procurement officers in all the ministries, they were the boys in town. They're the ones who are buying apartment blocks in town, the ones who are driving the latest models of cars, Mercedes, Toyota, what have you. They're the ones who are building castles in rural areas. They're the ones who are building high-rise buildings in village markets. If you did a lifestyle audit, you're able to catch them. And we did lifestyle audits and caught very many of them. We sacked some we sent to jail. And all of a sudden, revenue rose up. From 200 billion shillings within the 6 months from January to June, we went up by 100 billion shillings. We collected 300 billion shillings. So we said the answer is not to increase taxes, but to spread out, widen the net, and lower the taxes, and we get more revenue. The following year it went 500 billion, 700 billion, 900, we reached 1 trillion. We were able to finance most of our budget from local resources without having to borrow from donors. 95% of our development expenditure was coming from local revenue. And that's why we were advising the inadvisable that you don't have to increase taxes to get revenue. Procurement, because you can raise revenue, but it all just goes into people's pockets. We found that under Moi, there was a procurement law which says that any item above 100,000 shillings